Hi, I'm Nick Murata, and I'm here to tell you what I've been working on so far. I've included a lot of information in these slides, so I won't go over it all, but feel free to pause at any moment and read further into what I've included. So I've been looking at this issue of loneliness and social isolation, and I've included some academic definitions, but it all pretty much boils down to social loneliness as this idea of negatively perceived social isolation. And that's a situation where people are having less quality and quantity of relationships than they desire. So the problem seems to disproportionately affect people with disabilities. In a survey by the disability charity Sense, 53% of people with disabilities reported feeling lonely. 6% reported having no friends at all, and 25% said that more opportunities to meet people would help. When they surveyed non-disabled people, 49% said they feel they do not have anything in common with disabled people, and 26% admitted to avoiding engaging in conversation with a disabled person. So there's a big mismatch here that seems to be at the core of the loneliness problem in the disabled population, and I'm hoping to get to the bottom of it and address it with my design. So in analyzing our context of ophthalmology and physical rehabilitation, I looked at an average patient journey. The waiting experience jumped out to me as formally and emotionally unfixed. It seemed to be prime real estate for some sort of design intervention. In the Q&A with Deepan and Gretchen, I found out that ophthalmology has, on average, the longest waiting times. And they said it's very, very common for patients to be accompanied by family members or caretakers or hired help. So these people are included in those long wait times. People tend to find some way to distract themselves, which may include chatting with their loved ones. But this is really what led me to decide to focus on ophthalmology. So I started doing research into the intersection of visual impairment and loneliness. And I found that of interviewed adults with visual impairments, 28.7% were found to experience loneliness, and of seniors with visual impairments, 54% were found to experience loneliness. So I started to get a clearer idea of who this persona is that I'm focusing on. I then found this paper, this social science paper that sort of addressed the problem of loneliness as a whole and talked about what systemic changes need to happen to address it. And I found this interesting quote at the end of their report where they said, "It's also key to create a more communal environment in simple day-to-day life, an environment where strangers smile to each other on the street, ask the cashier how their day is going before they start scanning their groceries, where people talk to each other in the waiting room at the doctor's office." They said it's unlikely that you'll form this deep connection from those sort of interactions, but the point is to remind yourself that we're surrounded by individual human beings with very similar problems and fears and desires for connection. So I ended up with this project statement. How might I design a physical intervention within the ophthalmology experience that inclusively prompts social interaction? I'm hoping to afford more of those small but important interactions that people with disabilities may not experience as often. To begin, I've found some advice from the design of participatory museum exhibits. They talked about social objects and how a designed object can bring people together by asking questions or giving instructions for social engagement or being shareable. But basically, it's a way that an institution can, give people an excuse to have these interactions. And though I'm focusing specifically on those with visual impairments, I don't want to alienate people due to other disabilities. So I've laid out these considerations of all those sort of possible barriers to social inclusion that I'll be keeping in mind along the way. And this took form in a persona spectrum, and Barbara is pretty heavily based on my grandparents, and Isaac is a very extroverted man that I met on the street. Here I've looked at the unmet opportunities for social connection in Isaac's ophthalmology visit. So to finish off, here's an exploratory sketch of a design idea that I've been working on. I've been looking at integrating some aspects of the coffee shop atmosphere, so to speak, into the waiting room to set the scene for connection. But more crucially, I've been considering the idea of a playful physical game that prompts you to balance a scale or solve some sort of puzzle with the help of a stranger across the room, and they'll be using their wirelessly tethered puzzle. I've also considered adding an extrinsic motivation like a free cup of coffee. And this is certainly not resolved in any sense, very much at the beginning of the ideation stages, but this is the sort of thing that I'm entertaining. All right, so moving forward, I plan on continuing to research to find ways that people have already designed interventions that connect people across disabilities or despite them. I plan on creating more specific journey maps to look for opportunities for those fleeting moments of humanity, to iterate on design concepts through storyboarding, and to do some think aloud testing with, particularly with my grandmom, who is an ophthalmology patient herself, just to get her thoughts on how she would feel in the experiences that I'm proposing through each step of the process. So thank you for watching and listening. I appreciate it, and I appreciate any communication of feedback or just thoughts that you have. Thanks so much.